On the 5 minutes we are late, so we can start now our very first panel. And I would like to invite here our very first speaker, Dr. J. Nathan. So, Dr. J. Nathan, he will speak on the Mongolia at the Crossroads, Global Engagement to Modern Economy. So he already published a book on this in his subject. So it's very good. He's an expert, already have a whole book on his field, so he'll speak about it.
To be presenting one Mongolia, and my introduction to Mongolia early 2000, and I stumbled upon in the library at the St. John's University Queens campus, and I got, I wouldn't say hooked, in a sense of passionate about understanding the history and the culture and the geography. At the outset, I want to admit I'm a business professor, and so the context will be slightly different for most of you. And I also want to add, I'm strongly passionate about business education. Okay, I hope it's not called against me. Yes, so the topic I chose, as a scholar and friend, Sarul Dane introduced me, and took me about 11 years, and with 2 Fulbright scholarships, I want to thank the State Department for helping me, and still I'm learning and researching. Now the abstract, you all can hear me well? Everybody? Okay, thank you so much. So, in the 13th century, and that's where I start, Genghis Khan, and of course, in English they call it Genghis, and many of these things are all Mongolish, so correct me if I'm wrong, and founded the Mongol Empire, and that's history. And from a business context, this is the largest land empire. And the first globalization, in my opinion, in terms of the countries and cultures interaction, and I think it took hold, and and the empire showed first example of the interconnectedness among countries and culture. Number one, and so there was a global engagement, and I teach international business, and I'm sure many of you also experts and scholars, and we hear a lot about in the media, and let me want to point out that the global engagement, particularly in today's context of supply chains, perhaps that's a term some of you may be not very much exposed to. And the third, in terms of my take on the diplomacy, I bring these into context. So the people of Mongolia, in my opinion, strongly feel always had free-spirited attitude. And I tell some of my students, in some ways, if you all believe that there is certain European kind of free-spiritedness culturally, and again, and so though brief history and the lifestyle, and of course people say nomadic culture, yes, still exists. Recently, in my research, agricultural development and again the mining industrial development have taken place. And so let's briefly visit the map. This is the satellite map. And in today's Mongolia, but in 13th century, the map very different. And if you look at in a larger context, the Mongolia is not, at least in the media sense, in the Western media, is not in the world politics. And however, the contributions of Mongolians and the people of yesteryear still vibrate, cannot be overlooked. And yes, the geography here very much shows the Russia and China, and that's the map of today. Yes. But I want to bring this. When I was in my second Fulbright, I went to this museum. I had my professor host, and then I said I want to spend more time on this museum. And then I saw this. I'm sure most of you have seen this in the museum in the St. Square. And correct me my spelling or pronunciation, Modern Chayu. And this is 209 BC. And even though at the time the groups, the tribes, you may want to call it, disparate, and they were held together in a confederation. And this symbolizes the emblem and how the togetherness and made this as a treaty. And that's one of my distinct observations. I'm sure most of you are aware of this. And the notion going further, beginning from 13th century, and again, we know the history, all of you, particularly in 1227, after Genghis Khan's death, Mongol Empire was divided into 4 kingdoms, and his grandson Kublai Khan, of course, had one of the 4 kingdoms. Again, he was, I think, founded the Yuan dynasty. And the first foreign dynasty, of course, these are history. The point in the context that I would like to bring is that the culture and, of course, the Tibetan Buddhism and the not always give and take attitude. And most recently, after of course, the Russia and China independence from both of them, and quickly, because it's all history. But Mongolia has transformed itself from a socialist country with a planned economy, most importantly, vibrant democracy, of course, practice multi-party system. And for me as a business professor, that again is an example of tradition. It doesn't happen chance to decide. This has been held even prior and long history. Yes, of course, it is conquering, of course, but that doesn't prevent the deep sense of free-spiritedness, give and take, in the sense. And there is political pluralism in Mongolia. And of course, you may not say quite market economy. It takes time. However, in my opinion, that they are involved in missions subscribed by United Nations. So the country maintains diplomatic relations with 163 countries. So, as recent, His Excellency Ambassador pointed out, 2022, they had international conferences. And this year, now these international conferences engagement is natural. This is not something somebody else got them from the outside. And this is my observation, and I think I strongly believe in that. And let me quickly point out the globalization, global engagement. Of course, they have strong business and relationship with both Russia and China, and also United States, Germany, South Korea, India, and Turkey, among many other countries. They do trade. So for the lack of time, I do want to mention they are continuously engaging with ASEAN, other international organizations. So global engagement, which is one of the themes in my research. And just to point out that in 2002, Mongolia deployed 5,600 peacekeepers to the UN peacekeeping missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Chad, Sudan, Venezuela, etc., etc. And they are heavily involved in UN climate change as well. And now, what are the recent developments in modernizing economy? Now, this is another theme of my research. What is modern economy? Now, Mongolia has roughly 60% of the population young age, maybe give or take. And it is thinly populated, about 3 million, about 45% around Ulaanbaatar. And it's still, the land, the area is bigger than many of the European countries, even today. Yes. And what do we go from here in terms of modernization? Yes, using of internet, cell phones, and you name it. And the youth in Mongolia are as intelligent and as motivated, highly motivated. I work with the graduate students. I have some of the professors in my online courses. I interact with them. And even recently, even yesterday, I received an email. So I constantly engage with graduate students, professors. I'm also happen to be a visiting professor of NUM and also in other private institutions. But aside from this, let's look at this figure. Exports on the left side. As pardon me, it's about 10 years old, but I think the percentages don't change. The imports here. This is as a business professor, or still I'm learning, and you find on the left-hand side the crude oil and copper concentrate and zinc concentrate. So here's what generally the business scholars believe in terms of development, that when you import machinery and equipment, transport equipment, and so the import is larger than the export, we have the younger population who have technological skills, who have the training, engineering. Yes, there are many good schools, universities in Mongolia. Some of them, they're lucky they come to Western countries. But when you compare these, that some of the machinery equipment, transport, maybe 5 years, 10 years, could be made in somewhat, and that is a different type of engagement. And many countries do that. Even countries poorer than Mongolia, they do this. It's just a matter of policy. And again, you notice by this bar chart, the red shows the imports and green shows the exports. And again, these are statistics. And by the way, in my second Fulbright, I had the honor of working with the National Statistical Office of Mongolia, who's did it forward in my book. I'm really honored and privileged to work with the very fine statisticians and the group and the chairman. They're wonderful. Hospitality, I cannot thank them enough. Now, these are general reserves. Yes, every country has reserves of coal, iron, copper, but Mongolia has more of them. And now I would like to point out recent mining projects, Tolgai, Taban Tolgai, Oyer Tolgai, and pardon my mispronunciation. And you find in the map, I think most of you know, the copper mining, coal mining in Mongolia, it's giving GDP a new source of revenue. That's a good thing. Now, this map is particularly relevant. This is on my chapter 6 somewhere in my book. And I teach global supply chain. This mining, as you can see in the yellow, the Oyer Tolgai, the treatment, copper smelter, and this is a process not quite complete. You see the railways, the infrastructure is in motion. Many of you see, as somebody who teaches, and I also have an industrial experience working in American and corporate experiences as well. And this, what we call, is taking on the left-hand side the copper, crude oil, coal, and processing. And these processing should be done in Mongolia. And this is why you add value. And this is what we use, the supply chain. Now, the knowledge is there. The know-how is there. Is sometimes you got to have private-public partnerships. You have, of course, Rio Tinto, which is a Canadian-Australian company. They do partner in one of these mining. And I think there are more partnerships, especially international, who have the technology and have the industrial parks. And for the lack of time, and just to give you, yes, Mongolia today, according to some of the research studies, in the Freedom Index, it may be just old, but then it's still valid. This Freedom House index ranked Mongolia very high, and because it is a democracy and there is human capacity building is there. It just time will tell. More will come to come. And yes, in closing, is future development possible? I'm very optimistic. You know, I interact with young, and there are many scholars here, and I'm sorry. So you find, yes, so Mongolia can use some of the mineral resources and the revenues and try to modernize the economy, have the joint venture, and I believe the future is fantastic. It may take 10, 15 years, but it is possible. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Sarul Erdin. I appreciate your attention.
Questions? Say there's a question.
Yeah, please. Yes, feel free. I'll try to answer your questions. Yeah, I'm indeed optimistic. Yeah. Yeah, please, go ahead.
I saw that the export structure, right? Look at the Mongolian economy is basically
Yes.
depend on the minerals and
Yes, yes.
So it looks like we've been there, we've been like this for many years. Then what would be the better way to interpret to a modern structure? There's there any way, not everything is developing everywhere, but we are it's fine. Because our economic structure is so we cannot spend on
Yes. Excellent question. I'm going to rephrase this with your permission. Yes.
Speed up this modernization.
Yes. And I sometimes, even in my class, I'm sorry for my own indulgence, there's no such thing as a poor country or a rich country. And if I say United States, I wouldn't have my students say the United States is a rich country in Watson in certain aspects. And it is always progressive. And I think the transition, I wouldn't call it Mongolia is, I don't want to use the word from my mouth to say and what you just said, because it's a matter of framing the issues. Again, it's not take from a broader sense. You take these pieces, and if I pronounce it right, this Saint Hand, probably you're familiar with, I'm sure His Excellency, I'm sure sorry everybody. This is a very nice map, or at least the slide that would help. You take a little piece and go from there. Let's say create a think tank, and you have the government, both upper and lower house members, and you have excellent professors. You have intelligence right in Mongolia, but you also have to have, I'm not use the word foreign. There are, for example, IKEA is a Swedish company, have a department store. United States is a unique nation, and but it's very, very different. Okay, so you have a think tank, you have public and private partnership, and you always bring a visiting professorship or someone as an advisor. Okay, and you just take this and make it happen, highly motivated, and it could happen. This can happen in 10 years or 15 years. And think positive. I would never say the model, you don't have to copy anybody. In fact, as I learned listening to Nobel laureate, many things. For example, Amazon does not copy Walmart. Of course, they are competitors, but they use the business model, which also I teach. They tweak it very different. They all compete. So if you think Microsoft, Google, they had it easy, no. If you think Amazon, Jeff Bezos, if you look at the history, I talk about the life of Jeff Bezos, and you have to go to the history. Last week, 2 days ago, Warren Buffett had his, but he has his own take, but he's from different time. But you can't copy somebody can become Warren Buffett. No, it's not going to happen. You never copy. You just make it unique, and you have the resources, you have the skill, and of course, you also, I'm sorry I gave you a long answer.
Round of applause for the staff.